Members, next we have Representative Hewitt, House File 3188. Representative Hewitt, I believe your motion is to refer 3188 to the Ways and Means Committee, and we will be laying this over at the conclusion of testimony. So just checking with you, Representative Hewitt, if that's your motion.
Mr. Chair, that is my motion.
And very well, thank you. Your bill is before us. To your bill, Representative Hewitt.
Mr. Chair and members of the committee, thank you for hearing my bill this afternoon. Definitely there is a large fiscal note to this bill, but I hope at the end of this you kind of agree with me that maybe even that's not enough. We all know that basically our law enforcement agencies, and this is nothing new, this has been going on since 2018, are suffering from no pipeline. They can't get officers to apply. They can't get the schools to get more officers heading their ways. And this has really been a black hole for us. And then naturally with what's been going on in the last couple of years, it really put some clouds over the profession itself. And you know, what makes me real sad is I definitely know a lot of police officers. I work with them, I'm related to them. And I asked them very outright, like I ask anybody else in first response, hey, did you talk to your kid about being a cop? And unfortunately, every one of them that I've talked to have come back to me and said, absolutely not. And that's sad. That's really sad, because I think as leaders of our community and as police officers, they really have to be ambassadors for their own profession. I know I was when I was in EMS, and I am now as a legislator, but why can't we get more of them in? Why can't we get the ones that are there to say, you know, my family members, I want you to carry on this tradition and do it. I know everywhere I go, I look for leaders. And I want to make sure everybody on this committee knows I'm a sports official, and the chair knows why I like to point that out. But that gives me a distinct opportunity to work with athletes in the high school level. And this is a very personal story and a very sad story, but this year I had the opportunity to be with North High School three times in my games this year on the football field. And over the years, I've gotten to know Mr. Hill. Mr. Hill was one of those kids that you look at and know automatically he's a leader of people. He's a kid that got in there when the game got rough and sorted the players out and said, let's get back to work here. He's the kid that had the formula to go and be a law enforcement officer. He's the kid I walked up to and kept talking to every time I saw him on the field that, hey, you should really think about this. His response to me was, do you really think I can do that? I said, I know you can do it. Unfortunately, you know the rest of the story. Today I have with me my sheriff, Sheriff Leslie from Dakota County. And he's gonna hopefully give us enlightenment on what they're going through for recruitment and retention with his colleagues. Mr. Chair, if we could have Sheriff Leslie come up.
Very well, thank you, Representative Hewitt, and thank you for sharing your story of young Mr. Hill. Just a heartbreaking story. The latter part of that story. Very well. Welcome, Sheriff. You're always welcome in this committee. Please come forward, state your name for the record, and give us your testimony. You might be muted.
You got me now?
I'm hearing a voice now. Yes.
You guys hearing me okay?
Yes. Welcome, Sheriff.
Oh, okay, good. Sorry about that. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I really appreciate, and Representative Hewitt, for your opening remarks. Yeah, you're hitting the nail on the head. We need really good people. There's high expectations for law enforcement, and that's okay. That's expected. Yeah, I've been doing it a long time, and the expectations continue to get greater, and we're up to it. I think we, as a profession, can accomplish those expectations, but we need good people. It's that simple. And so, for my circumstance, I have 2 openings for deputies. I have 18 applicants. That's not a big pool. 5 of those applicants are from other agencies. So we're basically stealing from each other, which isn't helping the pool either. And I'm not alone. Talked to Roger New, the chief in Egan yesterday. He has 20 applicants for 5 openings. That's Egan. That's one of the premier agencies in Dakota County that pays very well. So we're hurting. So I think this bill really captures some of the opportunities. I'm speaking on behalf of myself right now as Dakota County Sheriff. I'm not representing MSA. They have not vetted the bill, but I think it looks really good. For example, some of the things we like about the bill, that I like about the bill, it's a commitment to pay by a county or municipality. You have that at the front end, right? This would be a reimbursement. It goes to the Commissioner of Public Safety, which we also like. It's focused on the new pipeline to get more people in, and it restricts the free agency model of, you know, go to Rosemont PD and get 10,000 and then put your year in and then go to Minneapolis and get 10,000. You can't do that. So it eliminates that issue, which is important. And it also balances the state. The sheriffs in greater Minnesota are not getting any applicants sometimes. And so we have that issue of a balance that the Commissioner of Public Safety would do to try to make sure that the opportunity exists for greater Minnesota as it does in the metro, and it's not just a metro-centric focused thing. So for those reasons, I'm in support of this, and I'm working with the MSA to get their support for this as well. And I want to thank Representative Hewitt for initiating this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sheriff. I've heard similar stories from some of the wheels on my end of my side of the metro as well, particularly the issue of losing officers, you know, to perhaps an adjoining or a district, you know, not too far from them, you know, largely driven by, you know, some economic, salary needs. Very well. Why don't we open this up for questions? And Representative Hewitt, you know, similar to Representative Morrison, I think there is a fiscal note on this bill. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'd be glad to be corrected. I think the bill itself does have an amount. You mentioned there's a large amount. I'm showing in my notes it's a $15 million appropriation. Maybe you can just fill in for me the issue whether there's a fiscal note yet, and or if I'm correct about that $15 million appropriation.
Mr. Chair, and yes, that is the amount. However, the fiscal note has not been completed yet, so I'm still waiting on that. But I know that our fiscal staff is extremely busy right now, so I apologize for not having that ready.
No apologies needed. We're not moving a bill here today. Thank you, Representative Hewitt. All right, why don't we begin with questions? We'll start with Representative Poston.
Thank you, Chair Mariani. Just a quick question for the bill author and then a comment. I'm a little confused by why the grants are awarded through the discretion of the Commissioner of Public Safety. You know, if an agency, you know, meets all the grant eligibility, shouldn't the grant just be given? I'm a little confused by why you're doing that.
And that might be both a question for the author, but also the sheriff who expressed, some comfort about routing this through the Department of Public Safety. I'll start with the bill author, Representative Hewitt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Representative Poston. I believe that was to put more controls on it. However, I am open to revising the bill. I think that it's important that leadership does have some controls here. I think that definitely they would be the fiscal agent. So I don't know if we can really skew around the commissioner at that time, regardless who it is.
Sheriff Leslie, anything you want to add to that?
Mr. Chair and Representative Poston, yeah, I mean, just listening to Kate Weeks just now, define they do. They know how to distribute money via grants. They have trails, audit trails. and the ability to make sure that it's being distributed equally.
Representative Poston.
Thank you, Sheriff, and thank you, Representative Hewitt. I just wanted to make one comment. I talked to my 3 sheriffs in the last week, and in regard to finding officers, surprisingly to me, but I probably shouldn't be surprised, they are getting plenty of applications, and guess where those applications are coming from? Right out of the metro. And so I realize the problem that we're having there, and I think it's important that we do something, and I'm glad that Representative Hewitt has brought this forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Poston. Representative Lucero.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. This truly is a very important topic. And I just want to relay a story that I have told before that I think is worthy of telling again. So when I was door knocking my community back in, this would have been in the months leading up to the 2020 election, I was there door knocking, coming down the driveway, going to on the road, going to the next house. And as I was paying attention to the door knocking, a car, an SUV started, was on the block and started driving down the road. And I could see out of the corner of my eye, they were slowing down. They came to stop. And I didn't look at them, but then the driver's side window rolled down and they yelled out the window, "Are you Representative Eric Lucero?" At that point, obviously I stopped and turned around and I said, "Well, yes, I am." And he said, "Representative Lucero, I just want to thank you for standing up for law enforcement. I want to thank you for supporting us because we are under attack. Our profession, not only in Minnesota, but across the country is under attack. And we need your help." And Representative Lucero, I'm not even going to mention the district or the department that he worked for, but it was within Hennepin County. And he said, "Representative Lucero, we are scared. We are very concerned for ourselves, our safety, because of the attacks, the unjustified attacks against law enforcement professionals that are happening." And when I hear chants like pigs in a blanket, fry them like bacon, coming from these disgusting people who are attacking law enforcement, that's contributing to the demoralization of our law enforcement professionals. And when these people who are attacking our law enforcement, we saw another headline in the same community that I was door knocking at Seago. We had a truck driver who was unjustifiably attacked a couple summers ago, and because of protesters that were let under the freeway, attacking our law enforcement officers. And so there's no question in my mind why this is happening. This is happening because good people like our law enforcement professionals are under attack. That's why it's not a question. We don't need to beat around the bush. That's why applications are dropping. That's why law enforcement professionals in the metro area are applying for communities that are in other parts of Minnesota because they know they don't have support. When you have council members standing up, calling for the defunding of the police. So Representative Hewitt, I thank you for this. I mean, it's a great conversation, but we don't need to ask the question and wonder why they're struggling to get applications, because we know why. It's because our great professional law enforcement officers are under attack unjustifiably. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Edelson. You might be mute, Representative Edelson.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. I was just taking a deep breath there after I just heard that. That's
deep breaths are good.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're at this point in time. I want to thank you, Representative Hewitt, for your bill, where we are politicizing everything. And really what we need to be talking about is solutions. And so thank you for bringing this as an idea for a solution. This isn't whether or not people hate cops. This isn't whether or not we really have to come to a place where we can work together, that we can find, policing that works for people, that we can build trust again. Because I don't want law enforcement officers to feel like people don't want to be in this field. So I think that this is a great step. I think that we need to look at multiple things. And I just would ask some of my colleagues here. I have great relationships with my law enforcement officers. I talk to them probably numerous times a week. This isn't about how Democrats hate law enforcement. So if we could stop that narrative, that would be really helpful for me. It's hard to hear it because I've never said pig at a Blake. I've never said that. But yet we come on this committee and we say things like that and we create this narrative and it's just completely inaccurate. So I would like us to just take a pause and really try to help law enforcement, try to help communities as we do this work. So thank you.
Thank you, Representative Edelson. I suspect, like many other members of this committee, I also regularly communicate with my law enforcement. That was especially true this week when we had a horrific incident in just blocks from my home. So really important for public servants to be communicating with one another, constantly. All right, let's move on. Representative Frazier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I'm a little baffled by the rant that we just heard, because this is a recruitment and retention bill for law enforcement officers. I would expect that this was anything anti would be the opposite of that, but it is absolutely not. But to the bill, thank you, Representative Hewitt, for bringing the bill. I had a couple of questions. One, Leslie brought this up, and one of the things he said was that, we're seeing tougher, in certain areas, we're seeing a tougher time of getting applicants than we are in some of the areas. And I was wondering if in the bill, if we could, if there's a way, Rep. Hewitt, I'd like to work with you on that, if we could focus where these resources are going so we can be more targeted, because we know that there are some areas that are struggling more than others to get an applicant, to get a decent applicant pool of qualified, good moral standing officers. So I'd like to work with you on that if we get a chance. And then two, I understand that they're getting these bonuses, these payouts, but I want to make sure we have some guardrails on the terms of the merits for these officers when they're getting them. If there could be language around if you haven't received a certain amount of complaints within the last few months or years, because I want to make sure that we're not rewarding bad behavior.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Sheriff. Or rather, I'm sorry, I'm looking over some notes and I misheard. I heard Sheriff Leslie's name earlier, but to the author, Representative Hewitt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative Frazier, for those comments and those questions. Yeah, we can work together as we've formed the committee bill here on what this will look like and where some focus should mainly be put. But I also don't want to lose emphasis on, regardless of what we heard today from Representative Poston, that's great that he does not have an application problem, but that's not the same in our reservations. It's not the same in our smaller towns. It's just not the same in elsewhere when I've been looking around the state. As most of you know, I've been working on the EMS stuff, but along with that comes this too. And we're just having a recruitment and retention problem, plain and simple. And it's good that Representative Poston don't see that that's happening where he is, but it is happening elsewhere. And then as far as the second one goes, I think that those are decent conversations to have. I would like to incorporate all the stakeholders with the police officers themselves, along with the chiefs and the sheriffs, just so we have all the stakeholders at the table when we start looking at the guardrails we had put in place for this. I don't know if Sheriff Leslie has anything to add to that.
Sheriff?
Mr. Chair, Representative Frazier and Representative Hewitt. Yeah, I think the language on 1.20 says the recruitment bonus only after the agency has paid the bonus and only after the officer's 1-year anniversary. And remember, in law enforcement, you can terminate anybody on probation. So this would allow the agency to get rid of an officer who's generating complaints. I mean, you better not be generating complaints when you don't have any, you're not even off probation. That's kind of a big red flag. And we would not hesitate to move, at least at the Dakota County Sheriff's Office. I don't speak for everybody, but we would clearly, people getting complaints that early on, we gotta send them packets. So thank you.
Representative Frazier.
Chair Leslie, I can appreciate that piece, and I do understand public sector, the probationary periods where you can remove folks at will. But what I want to make sure is that we're explicit about the opportunity at the moments where we would not give that bonus, because there could be there could be complaints, there could be issues, and they may not be removed because it may not be a removable offense. Doesn't mean that they haven't had some misconduct or at least allegations that are found to be substantiated.
Yeah, thank you, Representative Frazier. It's certainly appropriate for the state to attach conditions for the use of state resources. We do that all the time in the interest of the citizenry. Representative Hewitt, I appreciate your wisdom. Pretty similar members to the earlier conversation on the EpiPens, where one of our members, raised a possibility of, some policy language that could be added in that conversation as we move forward. Similarly here, part of the reason why we work awfully hard in this committee up front is to hear bills so that we can hear ideas that people have and then create the necessary space for us to continue to fashion those bills in a way that meets what we're hearing here. And then later on, when we pull them up either individually or in the omnibus bill, we can then take action after more deliberation. So it's good for us to be able to process these things through and listen very carefully to one another, so that we can come out of here with the best product that we can produce as a committee. Representative Hollins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative Hewitt. I have an actual question for the author, but first I want to respond to Representative Lucero's comments, because I don't like attacks on law enforcement. I don't want to see attacks of law enforcement in the streets or in the halls of our country's capital. There are elements on both sides of the aisle who have spoken negatively about good law enforcement, but I don't think anybody here in this committee has disrespected law enforcement. I have not heard of any person on this committee doing that. And so I would really encourage us to speak respectfully about both sides of the issue here in this committee, and recognize that we're all here to fight for public safety in all the ways that we know we need to work on public safety in the state of Minnesota. I'd also like to mention that calling law enforcement names is not equivalent to an attack when there are people who are literally being shot in their sleep. We cannot equivocate those two things. So I know we're short on time, so I will just go ahead and ask Representative Hewitt my question, which is, I appreciate the idea of incentives. I'm curious why this doesn't extend further to all first responders or to social workers who might be doing co-responding with law enforcement, because my understanding is there's a shortage of all of these individuals. And so I'd love to hear more about that.
Other parts of the public safety system, in other words. Representative Hewitt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative Hollins. Great question. And you're right. We need to look at all avenues of first response and look at how we can get more in. We will all hear a report on Friday from the OLA about the MSRB. And I encourage all of us to dig into that, because it does have to do with why we're having response time issues in the outstate. And so I would encourage all of you to listen to that report, and maybe we can enhance what packages we're putting together for retention. And I'm real curious to work with you also on the social worker program. We are having great success with that in Dakota County, and we're going to need more. And so I think these are all positive aspects, and let's do it together, Representative.
Very well, thank you, Representative Hewitt. Again, really reinforcing the chair's methodology, that part of what we do here, a good chunk of what we do here is to hear bills and then raise issues, go back and work those bills. So I look forward to a number of you coming together and doing that between now and the time when we put our big bill together. All right, we have two final committee members. We have Representative Grasso, and then we'll close out with Representative Johnson. before the chair moves to lay this over. Representative Grasso.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Sheriff Leslie, for being here today. And again, Representative Hewitt, thank you for bringing this bill forward. Listen to everybody speak. I mean, it just, people's memories are very short. People's memories are very short. And sitting on this side of the table, I wish we were in person. I really do. I really do wish we were in person, because a lot of the comments that came in attacking our law enforcement community, I don't think a lot of those things would have been said if we had been in person. And it saddens me that this is what it's come to, because the men and women in law enforcement, they are the most diverse group when you talk about ethnic, religion, across the board. And yet for the past 3 years, they have been demonized. And it has come from across the aisle. I've sat in this committee and I've witnessed it.
Representative Grasso,
Mr. Chair,
I hate to interrupt you. Representative Grasso, I hate to interrupt you because I don't like doing that. But I really want us to stay focused on this bill.
I do have a question, Mr. Chair.
I would hope you do that. I certainly have given members some latitude to be able to express their thoughts and their feelings. I frankly have not heard any demonization of law enforcement since I have put the gavel down to start this committee, nor will I tolerate any such language. And so I just want to make the public know clearly where the chair is in terms of how I will conduct this committee always. And so I feel real compelled to interrupt you and just help you to get back on course here with no doubt is a legitimate question and or comment for Representative Hewitt. Representative Grasso.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And the interruptions have become too common as well. For the author.
Representative Grasso.
For the author.
Representative Grasso.
Mr. Chair.
Representative Grasso. You know, this isn't the floor of the House. You know, great theater on the floor of the House. We're here to solve problems and to hear one another out. I understand the emotions. I give some room for that because we're human. Absolutely. You know, you and I have a relationship that goes back several years though, and I appreciate that. So I will give you room, but I will not tolerate disruption of the conversation in this committee outside of the scope of what we're tasked to do here. We can do all that stuff on the floor of the House later or somewhere else, you know, but not here, sir. So please.
Mr. Chair, this is for the author. Would you go to line 122? And this is in reference to the previous question about the officers being in good standing. As far as not being awarded the bonus if they're not in good standing. Is that clear that is on there, Representative Hewitt?
Good question, Representative Hewitt.
I'm sorry, I guess I'm not hearing what you say. Is what's written is what I want on there? Is that what you're asking?
What does it say on line 122?
Representative Hewitt, I guess he's asking for the words on line 122.
Yep, I gotta pull it up because it's, thank God for technology, folks.
No kidding.
I lost it 4 times here today and maybe I can do it another time.
If we're in committee, we'd have a paper copy in front of us if we were in person.
I agree, Representative. I'm having trouble getting it up here. Why don't you go ahead and read it again for me and then we can discuss it.
Representative Grasso,
It just says,
you have the language in front of you.
thank you, Mr. Chair. It just says that an officer must be in good standing before these things can be doled out. So for anybody to ask about whether these officers would receive this or anybody would receive these if they're not in good standing or if they had any complaints against them, the officer must be in good standing. That's all it says. And you know, we have, like I said, We have a very diverse community in the law enforcement field. They're all moral and honorable people. They are out there doing the job that nobody else wants to do or will do. And again, I'll just say, I'll end it with this. Thank you, Mr. Hewitt, Representative Hewitt, for bringing this forward. But memories are very short in this committee.
Closing us out then will be Representative Johnson. Then we'll have the author make closing comments. Representative Johnson.
Chair Mariani, Representative Hewitt, I'm actually disappointed that we have to bring a bill like this forward. For the last 3 years, law enforcement has been villainized, not only in the press, by some city councils, and by members of this committee, and members of this legislative body. All but 3 members of the Minneapolis City Council tried to disband their police department. The citizens of Minneapolis said, no, we want our police department. This committee and your side of the aisle, the DFL party, the Democrat Party, has tried to remove statutes of limitations on certain offenses against peace officers. That is in the record. This committee has passed them. But it's only peace officers, not teachers who do the same thing. We've had a lot of teachers do stuff like that, those same type of offenses, but we don't talk about that. We've had members of this body protesting in front of peace officers' houses, threatening to burn cities down because they're a peace officer. Why are we here now? And why do we have a problem? We need to look at ourselves. We need to stand up and stand up and stand behind our law enforcement. Yes, if we have a bad one, do we need to deal with it? Absolutely. And there isn't a single law enforcement officer across the state that wants a bad officer working because it's a bad reflection on them. They want them gone as well. But we have a process that has to be followed to do it. Some of the unions have put those processes into statute, and we have to follow the statutes. And so there is a process, and part of that process is documentation. When city administrators and city councils and city HR people don't do their duty and document, it's hard to terminate an officer unless they're on probation, and they can be terminated without cause. This body turned down on a partisan vote just last year to allow law enforcement officers and cities to go into high schools to recruit high school students and show them how great a law enforcement career could be. But your side of the aisle said no. And now we're trying to find ways to get officers. We've been dealing with over 3 years of villainization of peace officers by your party. My side of the aisle is we've stood behind our officers and we've said bad officers we want gone. But 99.999% of our officers are good, outstanding citizens. They're good, outstanding officers. In fact, Minnesota is has some of the highest requirements before you can even apply for a job as a peace officer. The highest in the country. We have states from all over this country recruiting our people going through our criminal justice system for jobs. And guess what? More and more that we do graduate, they're leaving the state, which is unfortunate for Minnesota. We're short officers, yes. but it's because of the villainization of a great profession that is badly needed that is causing it. We need to stop that. I've been standing up for our officers from the beginning. Bad officers, I want gone, but we have good ones. And there's one other thing. There's a comment that about this bill that they know how to do the grants. This grant isn't going to OJP. This is going to the Department of Public Safety, which doesn't do a lot of grants that normally run through OJP. And the other thing that's missing on this bill is the administration cost percentage. Instead of a percentage, I'd rather see a flat dollar amount, because the amount of money in here is actually a lot for the administration of it. Over $300,000 at the normal 2.5%, which is extremely high for an administrative cost for a grant like this. So with that, I know that you're going to lay this bill over. Hopefully we can get the things fixed, because not only we need to deal with officer recruitment, we also need to deal with officer retention. And we have some bills that deal with that. Incentives to make officers stay. But until our political leaders start standing behind their officers, nothing's going to help. I've talked to officers on the line. They don't care about the money. They're more concerned about some of the policies that are being pushed that are detrimental, not only to them, because they can be detrimental to their families. And they have to look out for their families as well. And with that, I'll leave this here and we can lay this bill over.
Thank you, Representative Johnson. Representative Hewitt, thank you for bringing us a bill that stands behind our officers. Thank you for bringing us a bill that looks to provide resources for law enforcement. I do support that effort. I wish we had spent more time on this committee hearing, getting into the nuts and bolts and details of how we can do that better. Unfortunately, we wasted a lot of time hearing a lot of rhetoric. However, I know that you are committed to working a good, strong bill, and you have an open door to anyone. And so I would invite all members to knock on your door and work with you on this bill. And I would expect the same of you, sir. Representative Hewitt, please close us out.
Please, thank you. And I appreciate that, Mr. Chair, and those words. And Representative Johnson, I know where your heart is, and I understand it, and I can empathize to a degree. But in 1987, I completed my skills class. I was all excited to be a police officer. However, the place I wanted to go was St. Paul, and they had 600 people apply for a handful of jobs. That's different today. Since 2018, we've been having this problem. This was well before what happened in Minneapolis and what happened in DC and all of these other things. We have to work together. Remember, it was a Democrat that brought this bill to you today, but I'm sure I'm looking forward to my Republican friends on the other side to help me get it better. So I look forward to working this bill with all of you as we move it forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Hewitt, for the bill. And with that, let me make sure I lost my bill number here. All right, with that, the chair lays over House File 3188 for possible inclusion in this committee's omnibus bill.